Imagine being in a room full of people laughing, talking, pretending everything is fine, and yet feeling completely alone. Not for lack of company, but because you carry within you an invisible weight that no one else seems to notice. You perceive the hidden tensions, the disguised fears, the unspoken wounds, as if your soul had an antenna to capture what others pretend not to see. This is the curse, and at the same time, the blessing of those who see too much. Sarah sat at the mahogany table, observing this everyday scene with eyes that penetrated the surface. Synchronized laughter, rehearsed comments about TV shows and travels, multiple approvals. Everything seemed perfect, a carefully choreographed spectacle. But for Sarah, the stage hid deep shadows. She heard the hidden anxiety in Michael's voice when he talked about the promotion, noticed Jennifer's fleeting glance when they touched on the subject of marriage, felt David's silent retreat in the face of ambition. While everyone else remained trapped on the surface, Sarah delved into the depths of what was unsaid. This is the burden of those who think and feel with greater intensity than average. Those whose souls are not content with superficiality, whose conscience is a flame that illuminates what many prefer to leave in darkness. Carl Jung understood this experience better than anyone. He wrote, "The more intelligent and self-aware a person is, the more he suffers from the general unconsciousness of society, not as a trophy, but as a warning of the weight carried by those who cannot ignore what they see." Being a deep thinker doesn't just mean having brilliant ideas or being admired for your wit. It means carrying a silent pain, the realization that most people prefer comfortable blindness to uncomfortable truth. It often means feeling like a foreigner within your own culture, a stranger among acquaintances, a loner in a crowd. This is not the story of misunderstood geniuses, but of souls who feel too much in a world that prefers not to feel. Sarah tried to engage in meaningful conversations, talking about the paradoxical loneliness of the digital age, about how social media creates illusory connections that only deepen isolation. But her words collided with an invisible barrier, empty smiles, piercing silences. And so she retreated into herself, carrying the weight of her unshared reflections. And perhaps you, who are listening now, recognize this feeling. The psychology of deep thinkers is this: an existence marked by restlessness, by the incessant search for meaning amidst the noise of the world. It's growing up asking why, while everyone around you resigns themselves to because it's always been this way. It's facing early rejection from those who fear the critical eye and acute sensitivity. Friedrich Nietzsche called these individuals free spirits, those who have freed themselves from the shackles of collective illusions, but who walk alone through an internal desert of their own making. These free spirits are essential to humanity's progress, but they pay a high price for their freedom. And maybe you, like Sarah, also carry this desert. It may seem like a punishment, but it's actually a gift. You're not wrong for feeling and thinking this way. You're simply living a truth that most people still don't want to face. You weren't made to fit into narrow molds, for your soul expands beyond the boundaries of convention. Jung knew that deep thought brings with it not only suffering, but a responsibility to be a beacon in the darkness, a guardian of the truth that many prefer to avoid. And until that truth becomes commonplace, you remain here, seeing, feeling, questioning, even when everything around you seems to scream at you to be quiet. Because life can't just be a theater of empty masks and rehearsed conversations. There's something more, something real, something urgent to be discovered. And that something begins precisely when you accept that you don't need and shouldn't be normal, that your depth is your strength. This is the story of those who cannot take their eyes off the truth, even if it hurts. And it is also the beginning of your liberation. Have you ever noticed how some people seem tuned into a different frequency? It's as if they live in another dimension, where colors are more intense, sounds deeper, emotions more poignant. It's not a matter of intelligence or culture. It's something more subtle, almost secret. A sensitivity that magnifies every detail, that hears the unsaid, that feels the invisible weight of silence. This is the frequency of deep thinkers, a parallel universe within the ordinary. They are not disconnected from reality. On the contrary, They experience it in its entirety, with all its beauty and all its pain. It is this sensitivity that allows them, in the midst of superficial conversation, to capture hidden tensions, perceive masks about to fall, and feel the emptiness disguised as joy. Sarah, at that dinner, wasn't just listening to the words. She heard what wasn't said. She sensed the fear behind the trembling voice, the tiredness hidden in the smile, the silent sadness in the distant gaze. It was as if you had a radar for the frequencies most chose to ignore. And this wasn't just a matter of choice. It was a condition, a way of being in the world that I couldn't turn off. Carl Jung taught us that there is a deep shared space in our minds, the collective unconscious, where archetypes, symbols and patterns reside that span cultures and generations. Deep thinkers are those who have somehow come into more direct contact with this subterranean world. They navigate between the conscious and the unconscious, perceiving nuances that escape the distracted eye. But this heightened perception doesn't come without a price. Living on a different frequency often means feeling out of place, misunderstood, even isolated. It's as if there's an invisible wall separating those who feel too much from those who prefer to maintain a calm surface. Nietzsche called these beings free spirits. They are those who have broken the bonds of conventional thought and find themselves in a desert, surrounded by dismantled illusions and shattered certainties. They see society from the inside, understand its mechanisms, and recognize its contradictions, and this weighs heavily. However, this condition is not an inevitable burden, but a calling, an invitation to be guardians of truth in times of collective distraction. And you who are here now, perhaps recognize this frequency within yourself. Perhaps you feel this weight and this beauty at the same time. Perhaps you know how difficult it is to navigate between a world that demands simplicity and a soul that demands depth. But know this, you are not alone. This frequency, rare as it may seem, connects an invisible network of minds and hearts seeking meaning beyond the superficial. If this reflection resonates with you, if you want to continue unraveling the layers of this unique journey, I invite you to sign up here, not to be just another number, but to journey together, to delve deeper together, to gradually find answers and companionship on this very special frequency. Because even in the solitude of those who overthink, true connection is possible, and it begins with the simple act of being open to it. Feeling everything so intensely has its price, and it doesn't show up in bills or invoices. It shows up in the exhaustion that silently corrodes the soul, in the tiredness the body doesn't understand, in the anxiety that sometimes feels like an endless whirlwind. Those who live in this deep frequency know that the mind is a constant storm. It's not just thinking too much, it's feeling too much. After that night, Sarah walked the city streets weighed down by the feelings she had absorbed, not just her own, but those of others. Every emotion, every small emotional fissure of those around her, seeped into her skin, as if it were her own. She couldn't turn off this antenna. She was like an emotional sponge, always absorbing, always filtering, always processing more than she could handle. Jung described this as a real phenomenon, psychic contagiousness, a nervous system that not only senses its own inner world but also captures the emotions of others, making it difficult to distinguish what is one's own from what is another's. This creates a profound exhaustion, which is not only physical but existential, because the mind and heart never rest. They are constantly on alert, always aware of a reality that many prefer to ignore. And paradoxically, this same sensitivity that allows you to perceive the invisible also makes you the target of an invisible demand. People around you sense this depth and unconsciously seek comfort, support, and understanding in it. You become the emotional safe haven, the patient ear, the shoulder to cry on for pain that isn't always yours. But those who welcome need to be welcomed, and this cycle is often unbalanced. You give more than you receive, absorb more than you can release. The consequence: a loneliness that is different from being alone. A loneliness that comes from feeling disconnected precisely because you're hypersensitive to connections. Society rarely values this dimension. It prefers efficiency, speed, and superficiality. And you, who live in deeper layers, find yourself struggling to fit into a world that doesn't know how to handle your intensity. It's not a lack of strength or capacity. It's the weight of a mind that won't shut up, of a heart that won't conform to the mask of normality. And herein lies the paradox of the deep thinker. His greatest wealth is also his greatest vulnerability. Jung reminded us that to preserve their mental health, these individuals need to develop protective strategies, learning to set boundaries, to recognize what is theirs and what is another's, to cultivate moments of solitude that are not loneliness but renewal. It's a delicate dance between giving and receiving, between diving into the depths and emerging into the everyday. The path of the deep thinker is not easy, but it is necessary, because without them, the world would remain blind to its own shadows and illusions. And even though the load is heavy, they keep walking with courage and authenticity, even when they feel like the weight might crush them, because they know that their profound vision is also a light that can guide, transform, and awaken. Have you ever felt, deep down, that you're living a double life? A part of you wants to scream, show your true colors, expose your complex thoughts and intense feelings. But another part, perhaps the part that wants to survive, puts on a mask, a smooth, polished mask, acceptable to the world. A mask that allows you to go unnoticed, avoid conflict, and carve out a place, however small, on the surface of social life. Sarah knew this internal struggle well. She learned early on that her way of feeling and thinking was too much for most, that her questions made adults uncomfortable, that her intensity could alienate friends. So like so many other deep thinkers, she developed the mask of normal. This mask isn't a cheap act. It's not a deception. It's a survival strategy. It's a shield that allows entry into spaces that would otherwise be inaccessible. It's a way to protect oneself from rejection and misunderstanding. But this protection comes at a cost. The mask demands constant energy. It requires vigilance and control. You have to modulate your voice, choose your words carefully, and hide your true reactions to superficiality, cruelty, and indifference. And over time, this acting out can lead to deep fatigue, a feeling of living a fragmented life, as if a part of you is always shut off, suffocated. Carl Jung spoke of what he called mask fatigue, the emotional exhaustion that comes from constantly living in a role that isn't your true self. It is a silent phenomenon that often goes unnoticed, until the person begins to feel empty, disconnected, exhausted. But the paradox is that while the mask protects, it also alienates the people you most desire to connect with. How can you find intimacy when you're constantly hiding essential parts of yourself? This conflict creates a profound isolation, not physical isolation, but isolation of the soul. The feeling of being seen only superficially, while what truly matters remains invisible. Sarah felt this every time she tried to deepen a conversation and was met with polite smiles and quick changes of subject. The rejection came not in words, but in the silence and distance that grew. What about you? Have you ever felt that invisible distance between who you really are and who the world accepts? Have you ever tried to lower your depth so as not to scare people? This battle between authenticity and adaptation is one of the greatest challenges for deep thinkers. They need to learn when it's okay to take off their mask and show their true selves, and when it's safer to keep it hidden. It is a delicate exercise, which requires self-knowledge, courage, and patience. But every time you choose authenticity, even just a little, you take a step toward truer, more nourishing, more genuine relationships. If these words resonate with you, please consider leaving a like. It's a small gesture that shows you value this deep conversation and that you're willing to allow more truth in your relationships. Because the world needs more authenticity and less masks. The deep thinker's loneliness is not just a physical state, but a visceral sense of not belonging. It's the silent conviction that no matter how hard you try, it will be difficult to find people who understand the vast and complex inner universe that inhabits your mind and heart. From childhood, this feeling grows like a shadow, a whisper that says, "You are different." Not in the trivial sense of the word, but different at the core, different in frequency, different in the way you feel, think, and relate. And this difference, though rich and powerful, can be a source of isolation. Nietzsche spoke of the free spirit, one who breaks with beliefs and conventions, and inevitably finds himself wandering in a lonely desert. This desert is the space between the world everyone shares and the world only a few can see. But what happens when the search for this tribe, this group of souls vibrating on the same frequency, seems fruitless? When encounters are superficial, conversations banal, connections fleeting, the deep thinker then learns that the tribe may not be a physical place or a specific group. The tribe can be found in moments, in books, in songs, in ideas. It can be a shared silence, a gaze that acknowledges complexity without fear, a dialogue that unafraid of depth. Jung called this quest individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, and from that authenticity, attracting those who truly belong to you. It's a long and lonely path, but a necessary one. A true tribe isn't one that simply agrees with everything you think. It's one that respects your complexity, accepts your paradoxes, and values your depth without demanding that you diminish it. And finding that tribe requires patience and courage. Patience to accept that you don't fit in everywhere, that not every environment will embrace your authenticity. Courage to keep searching, even when loneliness seems overwhelming, because the tribe is a sacred space where you can be whole, where you no longer need to hide your light or your shadows. It's a place where silence isn't empty, but full of meaning. When you find this tribe, something inside you softens. The wounds of rejection begin to heal. The feeling of alienation diminishes. You understand that your depth is not a curse, but a gift, an invitation to relationships that transcend the superficial. But until you get there, the path is made of encounters and missed encounters, of losses and reunions, of constant learning about who you are and who deserves to walk by your side. And perhaps the greatest lesson of this journey is this: the tribe you seek also seeks you. Somewhere, someone is waiting for your deep gaze, your true voice, your authentic heart. Don't despair. Keep walking. Keep being you, whole, complex, intense, because your tribe is real, and it's coming. Being a deep thinker, feeling life with a greater intensity than most, doesn't just mean accessing deeper layers of human experience. It also means carrying an invisible weight, the silent cost of excessive empathy, a connection that transcends boundaries and often exhausts one's very being. Sarah no longer just heard her friends' unspoken words. She felt them, absorbed them as if they were her own. It was as if every anguish, every fear, and every sadness in the world circulated within her, coursing through her veins, shaping her mood and energy. She couldn't turn off this sensitivity, not because she wanted to, but because she simply couldn't. This experience, which may seem like a gift, comes at a price. Jung recognized that these people, whom many call highly sensitive, have a nervous system that reacts more intensely to the world around them. They are like living antennae, capturing emotions, energies, and nuances that most ignore or even perceive. But this constantly active antennae creates wear and tear. It's like trying to hold the ocean in a shell. The immensity of life and emotions washes over them, leaving deep scars. This emotional overload manifests itself in physical and mental exhaustion, difficulty setting boundaries, and a constant feeling of being emotionally drained. And paradoxically, these same people become the emotional support for others. They are the shoulder to cry on when others are in pain, the patient ear to listen to confidences, the safe haven for those who don't know how to deal with their own inner storms. But those who welcome without rest, without recognition, end up becoming invisible to their own needs. Sarah, even feeling the weight of so many emotions that came to her, often found herself alone in her own suffering, for the world is not prepared to receive such depth without rejection, without minimizing, without labeling. This dynamic creates a painful cycle. You give, and give, but receive little or nothing in return. And this asymmetry in emotional exchange creates a profound loneliness, a loneliness of being seen but not truly understood. Jung spoke of the importance of recognizing this imbalance to preserve an individual's mental health. It's vital to learn to create protective spaces, to establish firm boundaries that don't hurt, but protect. This protection isn't selfishness, it's survival. It's an act of self-love that allows us to continue giving, but without losing ourselves in the process. For the deep thinker, learning to take care of yourself is a fundamental step so that your light can continue to shine, without being extinguished by exhaustion. And even though the weight of empathy feels like a cross, it's also a bridge. A bridge that connects you to the world, that allows your sensitivity to be a channel of healing, connection, and transformation. It is this duality, between pain and beauty, between heaviness and light, that defines the journey of the deep thinker. And by recognizing the silent cost of intense empathy, you begin to discover ways to balance your vast heart with your vital need for rest and rebirth. There's an internal battle many deep thinkers wage every day, a silent war between the urge to be authentic and the need to be accepted. This struggle is like a constant duel between two opposing forces within themselves: the desire to show the world their true essence, and the deep fear of rejection that this very truth can cause. From an early age, you learn that being different can be dangerous, that too many questions scare you, that intense feelings make you uncomfortable, that depth can alienate you. So you often begin to build a delicate armor, a persona that hides your true nature to avoid abandonment, criticism, and judgment. But this armor weighs heavily. It takes your breath away. And as much as it protects, it also limits you. It limits how much you can express yourself, how much you can surrender, how much you can be seen and recognized for who you truly are. Sarah felt this duality clearly. She knew that her authenticity was her greatest treasure, but also her greatest vulnerability. Therefore, at times, she chose to hide parts of herself to better fit in with the world. This choice, however, has profound consequences. When you deny parts of yourself to please others, you begin to distance yourself. It creates an internal void that no amount of praise or external approval can fill. Carl Jung wrote that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires courage to face this conflict, to recognize that true acceptance can only come when you are true to yourself, even if it means losing a few people along the way. And that's the hardest part, understanding that not everyone will want or be able to see who you really are. That rejection often has nothing to do with you, but with the other person's fear and limitations. But even knowing this, the fear of loneliness can make you quiet, diminish, and fade away. You wonder, is it worth being authentic if it means being left out? The answer isn't simple, but the wisdom that comes from experience shows that authenticity is the only solid foundation for building true relationships. Relationships where love isn't a contract of exchange, but a profound recognition. The battle between being seen and being accepted never completely disappears. It follows the deep thinker like a constant shadow, but each time you choose authenticity, you strengthen your inner light. This choice transforms not only your life, but the world around you. Because authentic people attract others who also seek truth. They create circles of trust where being is valued above appearance. And you who are here now, who feel this conflict within yourself, I invite you to share in the comments, which part of this battle challenges you the most? Is it the fear of rejection, the desire to hide who you are, or the search for people who truly accept you? Knowing that we are not alone in this fight is already a powerful step towards freedom. Because the deep thinker's journey is not about perfection or approval, but about being whole, with all the contradictions, doubts, and intensities that entails. After years of navigating the turbulent waters of emotional intensity and deep reflection, the deep thinker comes face to face with a fundamental reality: the need to embrace solitude not as punishment, but as a sacred space of rebirth. Solitude isn't simply being alone, it's an internal state, a deep connection with oneself that allows for healing, self-knowledge, and the integration of the fragmented parts that the external world insists on diluting or rejecting. Sarah, after so many failed attempts to connect on the level she desired, learned to value these moments of inner silence. In those solitary hours, she allowed herself to delve into her emotions, understand her own shadows, acknowledge her fears, and also the strengths that resided within her. Jung wrote extensively about the importance of introspection for individuation, the process by which we become complete and authentic beings. He saw the dark night of the soul as a necessary, if painful, step toward transformation. This period of solitude can feel like emptiness, abandonment, and a disconnection from the world. But it is precisely this empty space that allows the emergence of the new. It is where the soul reorganizes itself, where fragments come together to form a stronger, truer mosaic. Modern culture often portrays loneliness as something to be feared, avoided, or filled with distractions. But for the deep thinker, solitude is a refuge and a source of strength. It's where the whisper of intuition is heard, where answers are found that the hustle and bustle of everyday life obscures. However, the journey to embracing solitude is not simple. It requires courage to face the discomfort of one's own company, to look within without running away, to welcome what arises, even if it's old pain or nagging doubts. And in this alchemy of introspection, the deep thinker learns to transform solitude into companionship, emptiness into plenitude, silence into a profound dialogue with one's own being. This practice strengthens the ability to maintain authenticity in the outside world, to navigate relationships without getting lost, and to resist the pressure to adapt to other people's masks. Solitude then becomes not a state of isolation, but a space for encountering oneself, the starting point for any true connection with another. And in this encounter, life takes on a new color, a new texture. The pain still exists, but it's permeated with new wisdom. Emotional intensity no longer consumes, but nourishes. The external world may still be difficult, but the internal world offers a solid and secure foundation. For the deep thinker, this alchemy is essential. It allows depth to be sustained without becoming an unbearable weight. It allows sensitivity to be transformed into strength. It allows authenticity to be lived with integrity. And it is in this sacred space of solitude that true freedom is born. The freedom to be whole, to be vulnerable, to be deeply human. The paradox experienced by the deep thinker is curious, almost cruel. At the same time as he feels an intense need to be seen, understood, and accepted in his entirety, she experiences an almost absolute invisibility. This invisibility is not a physical absence, but a feeling of being ignored in your depths, as if your true self were shrouded by a translucent veil that only a few can penetrate, and many don't even try. Sarah was well aware of this paradox. She walked among people, shared spaces, participated in conversations, but felt that her essence remained hidden, like a poorly kept secret that no one cared to discover. At the same time, this same sensitivity made her exposed. Every emotion felt was an open door to the world, vulnerable to judgment, rejection, and misunderstanding. This constant exposure generated emotional exhaustion that could not be ignored. Thus, the deep thinker lives a delicate dance between being invisible and being overly exposed, between wanting to be recognized and fearing the consequences of that recognition. Jung tells us about tragic authenticity, the tension between the desire to be true and the fear of the isolation that such truth can provoke. This duality creates a continuous state of alertness and self-observation. You become a master of emotional camouflage, learning to hide your depths so as not to scare others, to soften your words so as not to be rejected, to diminish your needs so as to be accepted. But this adaptation comes at a cost. It can lead to a loss of your inner voice, a disconnect with yourself, and the feeling that you're living a life that isn't truly yours. At the same time, this paradoxical invisibility generates a loneliness that is not simply being alone. It is the loneliness of not being truly seen. And this kind of loneliness can be deeply painful, as it strikes at the root of human existence, the need to be recognized as a unique and complete being. But there is also a beauty in this paradox, for it is precisely this dance that challenges the deep thinker to seek balance between revealing and protecting, between opening up and preserving. Learning to navigate this dance is a fundamental part of the path to individuation, the process of becoming whole. And it is this ability that allows you, despite the perceived invisibility, to find moments of true encounter, where your depth is welcomed, your vulnerability is valued, your authenticity is celebrated. These encounters are rare, but transformative. They restore hope, nourish the soul, and renew the courage to continue being who you are, even when the world seems unprepared for it. Sarah experienced these moments, and you, reading these words, can too. The key is to stay true to yourself, even when it seems like you have to walk alone, because in the end, true visibility begins within. It is the silent recognition that you exist in all your complexity and deserve to be seen that way, not by chance, but by essence. We've reached a crucial point in this journey. You may be silently treading the awakening to the light that has always lived within you, even in your darkest moments. This light is not a fleeting spark, but a constant flame that weathers the storms of doubt, rejection, and loneliness. Sarah discovered this when, after years of internal struggle, emotional exhaustion, and profound loneliness, she began to realize that her sensitivity and depth were not flaws to be corrected, but treasures to be cultivated. That her authenticity, though costly, was the only secure foundation for a meaningful life. Carl Jung taught us that individuation, the process of becoming a whole being, is the most beautiful and difficult of transformations. It's the courage to embrace one's shadow, to embrace all parts of oneself, including those that society labels as excessive or inadequate. And most of all, it's the daily decision not to dim your own light to make others feel comfortable. The light you carry is your unique signature in the world, your invitation to deep relationships, your path to inner freedom. But for this light to shine without fear, you must recognize that your worth doesn't depend on the approval of others, that you are enough exactly as you are, with all your complexity, intensity, and vulnerability. This recognition is a liberating step, because from it, you no longer lose yourself in search of external acceptance, but find yourself in a deep and radical acceptance of yourself. It is a silent revolution, an act of courage that reverberates in the way you relate, work, and live. And if you're here now, listening to these words, know that you're part of this revolution, that you're one of those who choose authenticity, even when the world prefers a mask, that you have the courage to be whole, despite the risks. If this reflection resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to this space, where we journey together in search of greater depth, authenticity, and meaning. Here you'll find not only content that broadens this vision, but also a community that understands the complexities of being a deep thinker in this superficial world. Don't forget to leave a like, a sign that this journey is important to you, not just to be seen, but to be heard, understood, and empowered. And if you'd like, share in the comments what insight resonated most with you. What part of your light are you ready to let shine brighter? Your voice matters. Your story matters. Your journey matters. You are not alone, and by accepting and embracing this truth, you become a beacon for others who are also seeking the path of authenticity and fulfillment. Feel privileged to be here, to invest time in yourself, to allow yourself this profound transformation, because the world needs your unique shine. And above all, you deserve to live life illuminated by your own light, brightly, truly, and fully yours.